everyone. Welcome to This Is Whole Life. And we have a special guest this week in-house. And yet there's still only 3 of us, Jeff. Missing you this week, but we'll catch up next week. Bernie Anderson. He is our guest today. Welcome, Bernie, to the podcast.
Hey, Randy. Thanks for having me. Good to be here, man.
Good to be here.
On the Whole Life podcast.
On the podcast. Ken is with us as well, as always.
Hello.
And he just lives here.
I do.
Yeah.
In your podcast.
But you live well here. You live well here. Yeah, that's really
life.
Good. Now, I met Bernie, I think the first time was at God Encounters.
Yeah.
You were a guest speaker at Forest Lake Church.
Yep.
And then I got to know Bernie even better when he was a staff member at Forest Lake Church. We did a lot of work together.
Yep.
And then he went off for new and exciting adventures. And we're going to get to those adventures in just a second. But now understand that Bernie, to do what he did on Sabbath at our church, Bernie treaded into some dangerous waters this past Saturday, folks. I don't know if you all realize it. If you weren't there, maybe you didn't see it. Maybe you didn't feel the tension in the room. Waters were mere mortals. They really dare not to tread, not Bernie. Nope. Bernie stood up on front, and he had that big signature Bernie smile on his face, love in his heart, preaching the good word, made that call that was on his heart. He did it on his wedding anniversary. No, but wait, there's more. He then proceeded to put a then and now slide picture photo montage of him and his bride, Christina, on the giant 30 by 30 screen, tempting fate and nearly 30 years of marriage that he would leave Whole Life Church later that afternoon as a well man. All kidding aside, congratulations to Bernie, Christina. And for her being a good sport, I turned around and she was kind of smiling during second service. And I'm like, wow. I thought you might change it up. Like first service, she's not here, right? We'll go with it in second. It's just like, but yeah.
She's used to it. I mean, come on. Ken knows. I mean, pastors, children, and spouses, we just do those sorts of things.
Isn't there a famous Whole Life or Florida Hospital video about next time he speaks or something? Isn't there something like that out there somewhere? But I thought it was very tasteful, and I thought, you know what? I mean, I bet you got some points with his wife for doing that. I mean, he said really nice things.
He did.
Nice things. He said nice things.
And they were good pictures. I mean,
they were.
Be honest, they were better of Christina than they were of Bernie.
No question about that, of course.
That goes without saying.
But. Yeah, it goes without saying. But okay. she was okay, I think.
Oh, man.
But, I did forget to mention the children who were seated right next to her.
That's all right.
So you were still 50-50 because they weren't there at first.
Exactly.
So you did okay. All right. I'm pleased to report that this week that Bernie doesn't know about our little section that we like to open with each week called the Velvet Sledgehammer. But I want to say that this week Ken was like, you know what? I'm not going to hog the sledgehammer. I'm going to let Bernie have a little bit of it. And I really feel like it was a joint effort this week, but maybe in the best way ever possible to use the Velvet Sledgehammer. Because as you may have already guessed, if you know anything about Bernie's role at World Vision, and you know that we were going to be faced with unthinkable needs in unthinkable places that we can't pronounce, unthinkable suffering of truly the least of these who rely on our help, children, they get you every time. It's the tearjerker, it's the heart puller, and that is the Velvet Sledgehammer because you cannot get away from it unless you ignore it. So I'm not sure I've ever been more excited with this idea of being chosen, Bernie, because that made that put an extra layer of velvet on the sledgehammer. Tell us about what this idea of chosen is, because I thought I probably had an idea. I was wrong. I was really wrong.
What did you think it was going to be?
Yeah.
I just thought it was going to be this kind of the same thing with the pictures, but of the kids.
And you still get to go out and make the choice.
Yeah, but we were going to somehow, it would you guys were hooked up with Dallas somehow, and we were going to bring a chosen aspect into it.
Oh, yeah,
TV
I see.
show
because it's so popular, and I'm I could see Dallas going hey, this is another way to reach those billion. That
World Vision is going to have you sponsor one of the actors on the chosen.
So I'll have to say, I thought
How much are you paying those guys, Dallas? We need to know
So that's really kind of where I thought we were going.
Interesting.
Tell me first what this chosen thing is about, because if you weren't there to see it and feel it,
man,
because Ken did not oversell, because that was the other part. I kind of felt like Ken was like, Man, I am so excited. He's been.
You thought I was overhyping it, right?
I'll be honest.
I've been known to overhype things at times, so it's fair. I'm not insulted. It was just one of those times where I think it would be very hard to overhype this one.
But you also kept the secret.
He did.
This would have been horrible for me. I would have totally blabbed it. Everybody would have known before they walked in the door.
It's really difficult not to kind of let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
But Ken did an excellent job. And it was legit hype. And so you want me to talk a little bit about where it came from?
Yeah.
So at World Vision, we transitioned from Richard Stearns, who was our CEO for 20 years.
Wow.
About 3 years ago. And the CFO, who under Rich Stearns became the new CEO. And he said, hey, what's going to be the next big thing at World Vision, right? We've been around 70 years. And especially in the sponsorship space, sponsorship has been around. And it gets some criticism in some arenas. And it's awkward in some spaces. It just is. And so he said, let's pray, let's really seek God, and let's see where God leads, especially in the sponsorship space. So an idea rose to the top. It just so happened that somebody came up with the idea of, what if we reverse this thing? What if we let the child choose the donor or choose the sponsor? And we said, that's kind of a fascinating idea. Can we pull that off? Can we do that? Why didn't we think of that before? So we said, let's test it. So in February 2019, we tested it at a church in Chicago called Soul City.
Okay.
Not sure if we could scale it or not. We figured we could do this at one church, get some great marketing pieces, videotape, sound bites from people. And it went so incredibly well. About 60%, was it 60? I'm sorry, 50% of the people in that church decided they wanted to get chosen.
Get chosen. Wow.
Out of a church of about 1,200 people. So 600 and some odd people got.
Just an aside, do we know yet how many people we had?
We do know, actually.
How
are we
do?
telling them, Bernie?
Or are we not supposed to know? Can we?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think this could be a bonus for like the podcast people, because if you're not listening to the podcast, then you won't know. And hey, by the way, podcasters out there, you don't have my permission to tell anybody else. You got to keep this to yourself.
That's it. Yeah, don't tell anybody.
Until after Saturday. So, you can hear it here, but you've got to encourage people. If you want to know the answer, you've got to listen to the podcast,
listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what I'm going to put on social media when I'm done.
Retweet this podcast and say, do you want to know how many people we got to participate at Whole Life Church? Listen to the podcast and find out.
So, the really cool thing about this, like Bernie says, is that that our church has been given the opportunity to be chosen.
Yeah.
You sign up, and then your picture is put up in Agua Catan tomorrow, Wednesday, or maybe that's today for those of you listening, or the day, or yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this.
Yep.
But it's going to get put up there, and children will choose you. And I just think it's just the coolest thing. And I don't know if there was a dry eye in the house when we were showing that video.
Man.
My daughter's like, I was crying. I looked over at Mom. She was crying. I looked
Everybody
over at you.
was crying. Come on.
It's tough.
So I mean, it's really touching though to see the looks on their faces. Just the empowerment.
Yeah,
that's the word.
The empowerment there to do that. So I think that's really cool. So I want to make sure we really point that out to people. And the other cool thing is you're maybe listening to this. I think I had no idea this was happening. If I had, I would have wanted to be involved with it. Cool thing. Hey, tune into church this week, and we'll even tell you on the podcast how to do this. But there's still an opportunity. The door is not closed. There's still an opportunity to do this. But Bernie, you guys kind of have an idea when you look at a church like ours of how many people theoretically should be signing up for, you've done this enough times, you kind of have an idea. So when we put out the number, what I kind of want you to explain is whether that met expectation, was below expectation, or was above expectation, and why that might be. So I'm going to go ahead and do the little drum roll myself. And then, Bernie, what was the number that Whole Life reached?
113 people signed up to be chosen.
113.
So 113 children being sponsored, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, 113 children. That will get to 113 children that will get to choose a family or a person.
Wow.
113. So how does that measure up?
That exceeds what we anticipate for a church this size of Whole Life. Now, this is a COVID kind of a world, so we're not seeing as big a gatherings in churches as typical. But for the size gathering that we had at Whole Life, that represents a really solid response. And I mean, it exceeded expectations. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd say it significantly exceeded expectations. That's what I would say. I might be a little bit of a proud pastor here. So,
that just puts a smile on. I mean,
oh my gosh!
Even if you're a proud pastor, you're a proud member, you're a proud whoever. I mean, that's 113 kids. That's not that's not insignificant.
Right. Think about how long that will take. If you're going to send the kids in there, do they go in one at a time, or are they going to go in as a group? And how does that work? Do you remember?
They'll go in probably in small groups potentially. It depends on the nature of COVID protocols and stuff in the field there.
Yeah.
So they could go in one by one.
Yeah. Will there be some pictures of them doing that?
Yes. Yeah, so tomorrow I should be able to send you some links. After that choosing party, they'll upload some photos to us.
So you'll actually get to see the kids in there, see them looking at the pictures, seeing who gets the first draft pick there. Bernie knows what it's like to be a number one draft pick. The rest of us may not ever have that.
Amazing.
I know. Absolutely. Bernie was my number one draft pick only once.
Only once.
We were we were searching for a pastor, and I said, Bernie's my guy. That was my first out of the gate. So you've been my number one.
Brother. Hey, absolutely.
I didn't know Ken, and I wasn't on the committee, so I couldn't have picked you, but I would have had I known.
Absolutely. I would have picked Ken too. So.
I would too. Okay. All right, so we're going to get back to, before we wrap up, we will give you guys what we need to do if you want to still get involved once you hear this.
The window hasn't closed completely.
Excellent. And we'll push it out every day on social with the podcast.
Beautiful.
All right, I want to go back to last week and read something that we discussed and get Bernie's take on it, because he wasn't here, and kind of process it through the lens of what we just talked about with this Chosen campaign from World Vision. Last week, Ken said, participation is a mandatory value in Christianity. Participation always costs something. Whenever you participate, it takes something from you that you have to give. And sometimes it doesn't feel like what you're getting back is meeting what's going out. So, Bernie, what are the costs for participation in Chosen? I mean, we're not talking about the monetary. We all have to find a way to make that aspect work within our budget. Right. But what are the costs of this, or are there any?
Yeah, no, there's probably this sort of unseen cost of a sense of vulnerability that I think, especially for those of us in the Western world, we avoid vulnerability at all costs. But
That's true.
You're put in a position now where you don't have the power, and we kind of joke, man, what if I don't get chosen? We know you're going to get chosen. But at the same time, there's this thought of, I'm in a position where I have to be chosen. I don't get to control the situation.
I don't have control.
I don't have control. Yeah.
Okay. So
there's a sense of that's the cost. Security, maybe. There's a discomfort to this whole
maybe experience. Even a cost of a realization of how well I live in this world, that people just a short distance away in the grand scheme of things don't live anything like that at all. And that realization, that's maybe a cost at my ego, or what did Andy always used to say, the idea of scarcity. That we're so worried about that things are scarce that we hold on to everything, when if we gave a little more of everything, there wouldn't probably be such a disparity.
There would be a great need, yeah.
I'll tell you one of the other things that I'm hoping that it costs people. I really hope that people will invest their time into this as well, not just their financial resources. I'm hoping that people will actually – there's so many opportunities to have interaction with the child that chooses you. You can write them. There's several different ways to go about doing that.
I'm excited about that, actually.
Yeah, right.
For my kids and for me.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I really feel like this is one of those things where not everybody's great at correspondence, but I think that's one of those things that if you put that in, I think I was just touched a couple years ago, I think right when Bush Sr. passed away, they shared that he had adopted a child somewhere and been or sponsored a child somewhere. I think it was in the Philippines.
I think so.
And then he'd actually written letters to this child, and the child never even knew that this was a president of the United States, because they were trying to protect the child from, but he'd wanted to do that, and it was just a powerful thing to hear some of the notes that he had sent to this person. Just as he kind of sent them as a regular guy, and just to think each one of us has the opportunity to impact these children by what we can send in writing and doing that. And there's just so many different ways to kind of have an impact and be aware of what's happening in that village, in that town.
Yeah. Love that.
Maybe some humility in that too.
Yeah.
Just, putting yourself out there, and some people might think I'm too good to write a letter, or I don't have enough time, or
when I've written my child, the thing that I've really had to think about is some of the things that I take as the most basic things that I have. I don't, definitely not a wealthy person, but then you're encouraged to be culturally sensitive to what they may have there and what they may not have there, and not to be kind of, I guess the word isn't like flaunting, but just inadvertently flaunting the stuff that you have and whatnot. And it really was, as I was kind of thinking about taking a picture of my family, okay, what do I want in the background for this? And do I really want to be showing off this the home that I'm living in? And anyway, and when I think about that, these children may be living in considerably less circumstances than I am. They are, And so I think it really puts some thought-provoking things as you're interacting with them and thinking about the world that they're in, the world that you're in, the blessings that you have, the blessings that they have that maybe that they can bless you with by learning from.
Excellent. Well, that kind of goes into my next question. When we give and we become the chosen for these kids, what will we get back? And from your experience and your position, is that going to meet and exceed what's going out? To answer, because I really want to answer these, because last week I had someone come up to me that this was kind of a thing like, well, it's mandatory. We do have to participate and we do have to do these things. And it's like, but what if I'm not good at it? And what if this isn't something I'm good at? And it always seems like I never get enough back. And maybe, so that's why I'm asking these questions. I'm hoping we're giving someone the idea of, here's something super simple that you can do, and here's what you're going to get back, and it's going to meet expectations. So let's maybe start with this one, and then let's apply what we get back out of it to the next thing. So what are we going to get back, and is it going to exceed?
Yeah. No, I think just as Ken was describing, there's a relationship that happens, I think. And if you invest something in a relationship, you'll get something extremely valuable back. I think God created us for relationship. We're meant to be in fellowship with brothers and sisters, and it doesn't matter that we're separated by, hundreds and hundreds of miles. And the only way that we can communicate is through an email or through a written note. I think that there's something in sort of just acknowledging the reality fact that is a brother or sister, and that's a family that I get to kind of engage with, is just really, really powerful. So anytime we can connect and communicate as a brother or sister, I just think you're going to get something out of it. If you engage, I mean, there's got to be, it costs, participation costs, as Ken has told us, and relationship costs, and it requires some engagement. So, yeah.
I really think you'll get back. If you put a lot into it, you're going to get a lot back. If you put the financial commitment into it, you'll get something back on that too.
Sure.
And I can speak on that one as a little bit of experience. The first child we sponsored, I think we sent one note to the whole time in 10 years, which is a little embarrassing to admit on the air, but it's the truth.
Sure. Yeah.
But with that being said, every month when I watched that money go out of my bank account, I was reminded there was someone else in the world who needed that money more than I did. Mm-hmm. It was a reminder to me that I am very fortunate and very blessed, and at that time it was $35, but $35 really isn't that much money. It's a lot. Don't get me wrong. If you're on a tight budget, it can be the difference between something, but it isn't that much compared to the need that's out there in the world and to my overall spending habits. So I just think you get out of it what you put into it. If you really try to connect with that child, I think you're going to get something out of it that's pretty great. If all you do is just let that draft out of your bank account, I still think you'll get something out of it. It's I think God has an interesting way of blessing us.
Blessing what we don't even know.
Yeah.
So speaking of the financial, I mean, this is something that I know for myself. Every time someone's like, "Hey, can you give to this? Can you give to this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And I don't know the first thing about World Vision, to be honest. I don't. I've seen. I know that you're a part of it. Yeah. So just knowing you, that's enough for me. I'm like, if Bernie's involved and has been for multiple years, I don't care how they do the money, or I don't care how the everything works out. You wouldn't be here for this long if this was not a legitimate and something that was full of Christ and His mission. So, But, you know.
Is it bad to admit that I didn't trust Bernie enough and I went and researched it? No, seriously, I thought before I go before my church and ask them to give money, I went ahead and I looked up what do the charity watches out there have to say about World Vision. I go out there and Google it. They have a stellar reputation in the charitable organization community for transparency in particular. They are gold standard, maybe platinum standard on transparency. If you want to know how the money is being spent, they will open their books, and they don't even. It's not even hard to find. It's right there. Boom, there you go. And they're very, very frugal with the money. I thought one of the coolest stats is that when you give $1, like for every $1 that you donate to World Vision, a child in another country gets $1.60 worth of benefits. So you're giving $1, and World Vision's taking that $1. They're multiplying it up to $1.60. Did I get that number right, Bernie?
Absolutely, you nailed it. Yes.
So I guess what I want to tell the church is I would never bring somebody in front of you. I wouldn't firstly donate to myself, and secondly, I wouldn't ask you to take a risk on them. And I do trust Bernie. I do trust Bernie a lot, but you know what I'm saying? So I think it's really important that if you give money to an organization that you can trust them and know that they're going to use that money effectively. There's a lot of great places that are wonderful that you can donate money to, and so you should be wise in how you do it. And I think World Vision is just top notch.
What better endorsement can you get than that from a pastor? That's gold for World Vision right there.
Randy's the only guy that's not a man of the cloth in this room. So, you're trusting two pastors here. I don't know what else you want. No. And that was just it, was because I think, especially during the pandemic, there's been a lot of people who have been like, okay, we've had to tighten the belt here. We've had to cut this. We've had to cut that. I mean, what would you say to someone who's just like, I think I can afford it. I'll trust both of y'all that it's a good thing to do. And, and coming just into that space where, like you talked about, let me give you this quote. Bernie said this: I learned that God indeed speaks to his followers. He's a God who loves hearing from us through our prayers, but he's also a God who speaks to us in 3 different ways: through his word, strong impressions, and on the heart, undeniable, and through a still small voice, which I've learned to call a whisper. And I think most people understand the word, right? We read it, we learn, we sometimes go, oh yeah, I can totally see where that works. Right. And then I think we get a little bit on the impressions. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm impressed, but that might be Randy's ego impressing on that one more than anything else. And then we get to the whisper, and we're like, say what?
Say what? What you talking about?
when you're looking for someone that maybe just like dipping their toe in the water here and going, I think I should do this. I'm feeling impressed. I'm pretty sure that's God. God's word tells me that I should be taking care of people exactly like this.
Right. Matthew 25.
Right. Yeah. Matthew 25. We did the challenge last week, so it's all building up. I just need one more little thing, and like the whisper. What is the whisper to you? And maybe, and I don't know if anyone's going to get the whisper because this week, but just with a financial decision, which is always a hard one to make.
Yeah.
Go through those real quick, and just like how that might impress somebody to make that final jump through the hoop and test and see that God is good.
I guess I always sort of think back to how God has always led me in the past. He's never led me astray. He's always had my back. He's always said, if you trust me, follow me into this, I got you. I mean, case in point, real quick testimony. My daughters go to Seventh-day Adventist colleges, and they are not cheap, right?
He has 3 girls.
I have 3 daughters. 2 of them go to Seventh-day Adventist universities. I transitioned from being a full-time Seventh-day Adventist pastor, where I got a discount at those Adventist universities, to World Vision, where I don't get that discount anymore, right?
Hopefully you got a raise.
And one of my daughters, slight raise, but one of my daughters was like, Dad, how are we going to do this? I've always known that I was going to be able to go, and part of it was going to be the subsidy that we received. I said, honey, this is what God has called us to, and we will. God has always been faithful to us all the way through. We've never had to worry about your education. And she's a senior.
Wow.
And she's going to graduate.
So that happened almost at the beginning of your transition.
It happened right at the beginning, right at the transition.
Man.
And she had always known, I'm going to go to Walla Walla University, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And Dad's going to be able to cover it because he's a pastor. So, again, I guess I would say, think about how this awesome God that we serve has always been faithful to us, even in moments where we doubted. And if he's whispering, there's no doubt that he'll see through whatever the next calling is. So,
Randy,
That's
the first child that we sponsored was about 12 years ago. And at that time, my wife was not working because she was at home with our kids. Mm-hmm. It was right after the 2008 recession. We'd been left with a house that
wasn't worth
was worth half of what we had purchased it for. And then God had moved me into pastoral ministry at the same time. And so we left that house with renters who weren't paying rent. And we were renting a home out there. And that was the environment that I was invited to do my first sponsorship with. And you have to keep in mind, like buying new clothes for my kids at that point was a luxury. New clothes, and so we wrestled a little bit with it because it was like, okay, this is $35 doesn't, at this point where I'm at now financially, $35, one $35 thing is not a huge commitment for me. But at that time, $35 was a big commitment.
That's a big ask.
For it. It was a huge ask.
Yeah.
And we decided to go ahead and do it. And for us, did that mean that we never had any more financial troubles in our life? No. But what I will say is...
It's good to hear that we're not alone in this.
Yeah, but what I will say is that God has been faithful through all of it. We've never had to... We've thought there were a couple times we're coming close to having some financial reckonings, but God has always seen us through every single one of them. And I'm just from the world... I'm from a worldview that says it's hard to outgive God. I'm not at all saying that there aren't people who have not suffered financial ruin who have been faithful, but my experience with God is that I just haven't, so far in my life, I haven't been able to outgive what He can give back, and so for me, that's one of the things that I just kind of think about a little bit. That I think about the organization, whether they're worthy. I think about the investment, what the impact will be. And then if I hear that whisper, I trust God to go ahead and sort it out from there.
And that impact is really great. I got to, the way that we do development at World Vision, we pool all those finances, those dollars. So your $39 and Ken's $39 and everybody's $39 at Whole Life Church is pooled together. So it makes that money is that much more impacting and impactful. So it's not a one-to-one sort of thing. So when you sponsor a child, you impact another 4 kids in that community. So I think that's really the strength of the model that we use at World Vision. I like to use the illustration. It's a model to where you don't just get some notebooks and pencils. You might actually get a school.
You might get a school.
You don't get any little some vaccines and some gauze and some Band-Aids. You're going to get a hospital or a clinic because of the way that we pool the resources and make them work all together.
So you're like the Costco of giving, right? You pull it all together so you can do more.
There you go.
I like it.
Absolutely.
That's totally Randy. That is not on worldvision.com.
That's not.
That's not at all. That's totally me. So sorry for that. All right. And I just want to read this because I love the fact that you used 1 Thessalonians. And 1:3-5, it says, "We remember before our God and Father your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. For we know, brothers and sisters loved by God, that He has chosen you, because our gospel came to you not simply with words, but also with power, with the Holy Spirit, and deep conviction." And I think that kind of sums up that last part, that all those things that, before God the Father, your work. And sometimes we like to concentrate on your worship is as filthy rags. There's nothing we could do that. And yet there is something that we can do. And this is a great opportunity. I'm excited. I haven't been able to wipe the smile off of my face about this particular thing the whole time. So let's get right to it. If you haven't participated, you were in a church, you didn't see it online, and we want to do this because we've been really kind of getting ourselves ready for this now for 2 weeks. And so what are the final details that people need to know if they go, wow, I did miss out on something good. Ken didn't oversell it. This is awesome. I want to be in. How do I get in?
Yeah, so you will, if you come to church this Sabbath, so this Sabbath will be
the 14th.
The 14th.
Yeah.
It's what we call the Reveal Sabbath. So if you were at church last Sabbath and you jumped in, you signed up, you're going to get to see who chose you. So there's going to be an envelope there, and it's going to have a photo of the child who chose you holding the photo that you sent over to
I missed that part. That is even more cool.
Oh,
You didn't know that?
Well, I was out in the lobby waiting for you guys.
You're actually busy doing
like
stuff,
serving.
aren't you?
You guys threw it back to us, and it wasn't loud enough in the lobby because people were already coming out, and we couldn't hear it. What?
That's the beauty
reveal?
of the reveal. Yeah, you get it's like you open this envelope and you get to see it. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we don't get to do. Typically, you'd also get a letter from the child in that envelope saying why they chose you. But that's going to come a little bit later in your actual like welcome kit that you get from World Vision. But so if you're going to be at the reveal this Sabbath, we still have a photo booth. So our events team is still at the church, going to be at the church. We'll have one photo booth set up, and you can still sign up to be chosen. Ooh. You'll do the whole text in. You'll text 56170, text Whole Life or Whole Life Online to 56170. And then go out and take your photo. Or if you're online at home watching, you'll upload that photo.
So someone could do this from home right now if they're listening. Okay.
Absolutely.
So guys, all this
they would actually do the online though, right?
They would do the online, yeah.
Okay.
So they would.
So I will have the online in the show notes today. So as always, there's always info in our show notes. Swipe up, everything is there, and how to do it step by step for the online only. But if you show up at church, both services, first and second,
services.
So 9:30 and 12, you can be there. I'm just going to tell you this for me, and anyone else can say what they want. If you're planning on going to the beach, come in your beach wear and get your picture taken and then zip back out the door.
That would be awesome.
That's fine. But if I would love, how cool would it be if we could do 200 people? Ooh. I mean, how cool would that be? Dude, that'd be awesome.
I'm just saying that Bernie's made some promises if we hit 150. I'm not going to get into what those promises are, but...
are we doing the podcast from Aguatan?
No, but these... I won't
maybe
get it. That sounds... Anyway, yeah, we'll just say we want to hit 150. It'll totally be worth it. It'll be...
Did I oversell the podcast in another country? Did I?
No, not at all.
No,
you can't oversell this podcast.
No. All right, that's awesome. We're going to wrap it up here. I just want to say, Bernie, as always, it's great to have you, and thank you for coming, and thank you for coming on your anniversary of all days. We are not going to miss out on an opportunity to change the world because it's my wedding anniversary. That was awesome. So our final thoughts are from Bernie's message. He said, God doesn't waste a moment, and he doesn't waste a whisper. But when God whispers, it's often to move us toward mission. Whatever God calls us into very likely changes us, matures us, and increases our reliance upon him in ways that we never imagined. #that's scary. So God impresses on us his purpose, his plans, and then it's up to us. Then we sign up or we set out on some assignment, not fully knowing what the mission will bring. Just knowing that God spoke in a moment and we responded as Isaiah did. Here I am, Lord, send me. Beautiful and scary all at the same time. But I am so excited that we are doing it as a family. And I am excited to rip open that envelope and see who chose the four of us, because I'm pretty excited about that.
Hey, and two of my daughters that were there signed up to be chosen too. So I'm
Ellie's on the fence.
Excited.
She's just like, maybe I should, and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's up to you. All right. Anything we didn't ask, anything that we should say, Bernie, about World Vision, about the Chosen, anything at all that you want to just end with, or did we cover it?
I think we covered it. I think, the thing coming from World Vision, God's just, like I said, it's been moving for us, is that we want to always make sure that we're affirming that inherent dignity of every child, that because they have less doesn't mean that they are less. And we work really hard to restore the broken circumstances that they often live in. So the children, at the end of the day, this is all about, for us, bringing that fullness of life to children that live in just desperate situations. So.
And if that doesn't make you swipe up in today's show notes, I don't know what will. But you guys have a great week. And like Ken said at the end of the message,
don't be heartless. No, wait, I didn't say that. No.
I think it was his usual address to the family.
That was just a regular sledgehammer, wasn't it? There's no velvet on that.
There was no velvet on that.
Sorry about that.
No.
You can edit that out.
He said, family, whether you choose to sponsor or not, I love you.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the message we still want to send, is that we love you. But at the same time, I can't help but go, just swipe up and do it, because it's really cool.
We're all at a different different place. And,
Absolutely.
And you just need to do what God is whispering in your heart. That's it.
Yeah.
And nobody's here. That's the beauty of whole life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody's here to judge what you're doing. Just invite you to participate. And if you feel that call, participate. And if not, no problem.
Well, thank you guys for participating today here in the studio, and thank you all for listening and participating out there. And we'll see you all next week. Have a fantastic week in the process. See you next Wednesday.